The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Thursday, May 28th. And today I have a guest who's been with us before, Patrick Wood, who is an amazing interpreter of current events, past and future events, understanding the mechanisms of technocracy and how we are being moved into a 1984 scenario. Today, he is going to talk about the current relationship between the Trump administration of the US and China. As you know, we can't rely on what our president says because what he does and says are often two very different things. He's not the only one who did that. President Obama was famous for that too. But trying to understand where President Trump is going and really what US foreign policy is all about is very challenging. And Patrick is going to maybe help us gain a new perspective on how to interpret that. So I will leave it to you, Patrick, to just begin. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you for having me on. That's a tall order for sure. I've been studying this for a long time, as you know, and to say that I'm getting weary is probably an understatement at this point. But this stuff just keeps coming, and we have to address it. Right? There's no way around it. I wish it weren't true, but what happened in China last week was epic for sure. Most of the story was not disclosed by anybody in the mainstream media for sure. Most of the alternative media missed it as well. Sometimes I feel like I'm not talking to the wind, but sometimes I feel like I'm really crazy because I see things that other people don't see. And then I check it out and I do the research, and lo and behold, there it is. And so some of the stuff that I'll tell you here today you won't probably see it anywhere else other than through me, but nevertheless.
It will knock your socks off.
Well, I know, it really is crazy. I'm not surprised by anything at this point. I'm weary, but I'm not surprised that anything that happens today. I've been studying tokenization, for instance, and I'm trying to figure out why is the stock market being tokenized to death all of a sudden, and what does this mean? It's so complicated, you can't figure out what they're trying to do, and so I have a background in the stocks and bonds and investments and stuff. That's my first career when I got started, and I look at this and said, what are they? What's the object here? Why? How they come? Why do they are they after all of our investment funds, like the 401ks, the IRAs, fiduciary funds, etc.? Well, okay, we'll figure it out sooner or later. But these people have a way of doing an end run around anything rational. Okay, let's talk about China.
Well, not an end run around anything rational, an end run around what we think of as the government's role, which is to enhance our lives, right? To make them better, to provide more jobs, more training, adequate food. And when the government has policies that are intended to give us, produce less food, less objects, less industry in the United States, and devalue the money, we say, what's going on? Why is that happening? And I think you can point us to some theories about why that might be happening.
Yeah. Well, let's dig in, I guess. Let me start with this. I just lay it out, I guess. Number one, there's no race with China. This has been posited by everybody, and along the way, we have to beat China, whatever the race is. We have to beat them militarily, AI, 5G. It doesn't matter what it is. We have to beat China, and China is not they're not our competitor. They're not a threat to us in that way. China is not our arch enemy. You can basically forget the concept of multipolarity at this point, because this has been spread all over the ethosphere. Well, we're headed towards a multipolar world, and China has been promoting this for a long time. Next conclusion, the CCP isn't communist anymore. It's a technocracy. And this was revealed by Time magazine itself in the year 2000, when they said, rightly so, that China had morphed into a technocracy, and all of a sudden they were not run by ideologue. They were being run by engineers and scientists. So, and Time magazine put that in context of the 1932 version of technocracy very well. They just spelled it out. Why anybody didn't pick up on that article back then, I don't know. That's not my problem. The article exists in time and space. I have a copy of it. So Time magazine happened to be one of the first members of the Trilateral Commission in 1973. Hedley Donovan, the editor-in-chief of Time magazine, was a member of the Trilateral Commission with David Rockefeller and Big Brizinski and et cetera. And he was part of that cadre that David Rockefeller talked about along the way. That, well, we're so glad that we have the discretion of the press behind us, and they were allowed to attend our meetings, but they couldn't talk about it. So he said, our hat is off to you. Well, okay, so it's Time magazine, in any case, they released this news to the world that the technocracy has taken over China. So with that in mind, I want to just say, birds of a feather flock together. You've heard that statement, I'm sure, over the years, right? When technocrats in China get together with technocrats in America or in Russia or in Europe, it's a family reunion for them, because they don't care about nationalities. They don't care about divisions, with geographical divisions. So the technocrats working in America all these years have been cohabitating with especially with the technocrats in China. I'll give you some demonstration of this in just a second. But this has been the case. Elon Musk, for instance, they love him in China. He's a rock star. Go figure. He's launched companies over there. Has investments in there in China. His mother also, May Musk, she's also rock star. They treat her like a princess. I don't get this. She's an attractive woman for sure, but for whatever reason, and she's not Chinese. No way she looks Oriental in nature. But everywhere she goes, the people just fall down. Whoa, let's May Musk. Oh my gosh. And okay, so how can somebody like Elon Musk be so friendly with the people that are supposed to be our enemies, right? Just doesn't make any sense at all. So what happened with this trip, we know now that there were many people CEOs of companies in America who accompanied Trump on this trip. On the plane with President Trump, that's Air Force One, number one, Elon Musk was on that plane with him. And another guy by the name of Jensen Huang was on the plane with him. And Jensen is the head CEO and chairman of NVIDIA. That's the huge chip maker that fuels all these AI data centers around the world, especially in America. And by the way, we have like over 5,000 data centers fueled by his chips at this point in America. Do we really need this? I don't think so. But nevertheless, this is what the state is at this point. So all of the other people, there were 16 of them who did not get on the Air Force One with Trump, but they flew their own airplanes apparently to China. That figures. I mean, all these people were mostly billionaires at that point, and so they could make their own way to China. So if we examine who these people were with Trump, you see Elon Musk, of course. Tim Cook from Apple was with him. Larry Fink, the founder of BlackRock and also a member of the Trilateral Commission, by the way. David Solomon, the CEO of Goldman Sachs. Steven Schwartzman, the CEO of Blackstone, another investment group. Jane Fraser, the CEO of Citigroup. You might have the idea here, these are all CEOs. He didn't take any second-rate people along, all CEOs. Kelly Ortberg, the CEO of Boeing. You just can't make this stuff up. Michael Maybach, the CEO of MasterCard, the CEO of Visa, the CEO of Meta Platforms. Oh my gosh, the list goes on. Okay, so and Jensen Huang kind of came along as not as a tag along. He wasn't supposed to be on the trip in the first place explicitly, because Jensen had been forbidden earlier to sell chips to China. That was, for whatever reason, Congress got after him, and the administration blocked him from selling chips to China. All of a sudden, he gets a last-minute call from President Trump to join him in Alaska on the airplane, Air Force One. And so he went with Elon and the president to China. And we can reflect now backwards. Well, all of a sudden, that prohibition is not on Jensen anymore. He can sell a bunch of chips to China to process their AI platforms. Okay, so never in the last 50 years, for sure, has such a powerful group of people been assembled for a state visit. That this is unprecedented, and so you have to look. Okay, what is going on here? What was the purpose of this trip? Was it to kowtow to China? Was it to beg the chairman Z about don't be mean to us, sort of thing? You know, this is the narrative that everybody says. Oh, Trump's going to sell America out, and he's begging, you know, China to be good for us and do stuff for us. I'm sorry, that was not the case. That was not the case at all. He went to China to instruct China, if you will, that you need to join the global technocracy, number one, and you need to see how weak your position is, because if you don't join now, you'll never have I can almost see myself projecting into Donald Trump. I've said, look, your deal is not going to get any better than it is right now. Take it now or suffer the consequences. That's my opinion. That's me speaking, not President Trump. But you get my idea. So why would I say that Trump has boxed China into a corner? I give you at least 5 reasons. Number one, I call this the physical corridor displacement. There's a new trade route being erected through from India to the Middle East through Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., through Haifa, a deep water port in Israel, then on to China. This is going to be the biggest trade route that was ever constructed in the whole world, I think.
All right, from Haifa, it was going to Europe, not China.
Yes, that exactly. It's going from India to Europe. And it just so happens, I'm digressing a little bit, but this is important. It just so happens that the Strait of Hormuz is blocking the construction of this corridor. And this was something that President Trump needed to handle, because if there's any possibility that Iran could go nuclear, if you will, on that and close that strait, it would be trouble for the whole world. So I think he figured at some point, we're going to settle this now before it becomes a problem later. So now he's cut off China's oil supply. He took the oil away from them from Venezuela. He took the Panama Canal away from them. China doesn't have any influence on the Panama Canal at this point. We know that the northern sea routes are under attack by President Trump in that sense. Well, that's the Arctic trade routes. They weren't so important for China, but nevertheless, they were under attack as well. So all of a sudden, China finds itself without oil. That's a problem for them. They have to have the oil. They have lots of reserves. However, that this is important because they released some of these reserves. But if something doesn't change soon, they'll be running out of oil, and that will be the end of their economy. Well, just so happens, lo and behold, I just posted a news story yesterday that China is now buying oil from the United States. Yes, Chinese tankers are steaming right now to Houston, or not Houston per se, but to the Gulf states down there, Louisiana. They're also going to be taking oil away from Alaska as well in time. And so they're going to be a major buyer of U.S. oil all of a sudden. And who would have thunk that? This is absolutely insane. Who would think that China would come to us to buy our oil? Well, this is one of the intended outcomes of this summit. Guys, you need us more than we need you. So you play ball with us, and we'll fold you into the system, if you will, the global technocracy. Okay, that's number one, physical corridor displacement. Now, just along that line as well, China has spent years building up its BRI initiative. That's the Belt and Road Initiative, global trade routes all over the place, actually. So South America, Africa, Europe, they want to build this huge network, trade network. Well, as it comes out here now, because of Trump's interactions with the IMEC corridor, IMEC, that's the India Middle East Economic Corridor, all of a sudden, China's BRI program is in jeopardy because this could easily replace that as an important piece on the chessboard. So that's strike one for China. And then there's this issue of ally defection, especially probably the two most strategic partners that China had outside of Iran were the UAE and Qatar. And obviously, their relationship with Iran has been degraded because Iran's offline at this point, and it may be offline forever if they're going to get bombed into out of existence. But nevertheless, China was counting on the UAE and Qatar to provide them with massive resources. And so it just so happens that both of those countries have joined the IMEC corridor. And and all of a sudden, they're looking to the United States more to be good to them, if you will. And so it just we see this new initiative that the State Department put out in December of last year called Pax Silica. That was not a treaty. It wasn't an agreement. It's just a declaration. But any country that signed the Pax Silica declaration, they're going to be receiving that's America's technology stack in full, the construction mechanism on how to make all these things work, the data centers, the plumbing, the data centers, the chip design, all the latest chips, the latest operating system, the latest application layer, everything that we have with AI in our country is going to be delivered to signatory nations, lock, stock, and barrel, for them to impose in their own countries any way they see fit. So
how can the administration do that when these things are proprietary and owned by corporations?
they're all complicit with it. They're fine with it, and the administration right now is pushing this line. Obviously, it was the State Department that did this in the first place, but you have to remember that these arch technocrats in Washington, D.C., all of them, most billionaires, they've taken over the machinery of the administration for the sake of technocracy, and then they're calling the shots. So yeah, you're right to say they shouldn't do this, but they're doing it anyway. So in any case, these nations that are receiving our full stack of technology.
Now, are they paying for it?
That's questionable. They probably will in some way. That they'll have to pay for their own infrastructure to run it, I'm sure. But are they paying us a licensing fee? That's not specified right now. My guess is there would be some money changing hands. What happened with Pax Silica? Two of the first nations that jumped to sign this Pax Silica declaration were the UAE and Qatar. So all of a sudden, they're not going to run Chinese AI. No, they're going to run our AI. And so, China is left out of the oil fold a little bit with them. And now they're being aligned away from China towards the United States. And they're sticking like glue to us at this point, for sure. So this is what I call ally defection. And Trump has done this around the world already. Panama is a good example. China can't count on Panama as a trade route. Venezuela is another area where the same thing is. But the allied defection, China has found itself all of a sudden threatened all over the place because who they depended on before, they're not there anymore, basically. So
Now, but aren't Qatar and UAE frightened that if they align more strongly with the US, as they seem to be doing, that Iran will bomb them to smithereens?
They've obviously, the UAE, they suggested to their neighbors that they should attack Iran themselves, and their neighbors said, "No, don't do that. We're not gonna join you on that." So far, the UAE hasn't launched any of its air force against China or against Iran. So, but you can see they get what's going on. They know that Iran is after them already. They've had missiles launched at their infrastructure, oil infrastructure and stuff. So they know that they're under attack. But I think it looks to me like they're waiting for the United States to, the 800-pound gorilla in the room or in the zone, let them finish it, and then they can pick up the pieces. But you're right that there's a tension there. But I'll tell you that Qatar and the UAE especially, these are not fraidy cats. These are people who have total resolve with exactly what they're doing. The UAE, for instance, just dropped out of OPEC. That's the cartel that controls the price of oil. Who would have thunk that they were one of the principal architects and supporters of OPEC all these years? Boom, they're away from it now. They're doing their own thing. So they're marching to their own agenda at this point, and it's not pro-China. It's probably more pro-Trump and pro-IMEC corridor at this point. They want to be the leader in technocracy in the Middle East to manage all of the trade that goes along the corridor. And this was the field is being invented for this is called Fintech, financial technologies, Fintech. The Arabs have been all in this area for a long time, but the UAE especially has been part of this. So maybe just leave this for the sake of time. And just think about energy strangulation. Well, we've kind of talked about this already. Trump has closed 3 of China's critical discounted oil supply nodes simultaneously. And you add up the value and like Venezuela, for instance, China used to get 778,000 barrels per day out of Venezuela. That's a huge loss, huge. The Iran war is disrupted like 3.4 million barrels per day to them. Beijing has had to spend a lot of money replacing that oil at current prices and even scalping prices at this point to fill their tanks up. China is all of a sudden finds itself to be strangled by U.S. intervention around the world. That's all I can say. So they're desperate at this point. They have to pay attention. This is why they're buying oil from the United States all of a sudden. So if you look at it from Trump's point of view, that was I don't want to say it's a stroke of genius. that doesn't. I don't want people to think that I'm pro-Trump at this point necessarily, but he saw this. He saw the handwriting on the wall. He read it right, and he's manipulated China into this corner at this point, to where they have to pivot away from Middle Eastern oil to buy oil from us. This is obviously going to make a lot of money for the oil companies in our country. You and I will not see any dividends at all on this transaction. We're out of it, but it'll be good for them. Then there's another thing too. This is incidental, but for all the military bluster that we've seen with China, they want to take over a little island called Taiwan, and they bluster. They have the aircraft carriers and submarines and missiles and all that kind of stuff. Whatever, they've never been in conflict, armed conflict with anybody since 1979. They have no experience whatsoever. In fact, apparently all of their top generals just got purged. Go figure. So their military is kind of in disarray, even though they have lots of cool gadgets, and they really do. Compared to our military at this point, they're with they're like the low man on the totem pole, and so whatever they might project in rhetoric, it's not backed up by action. Case in point, you would think that China would have been really upset when Trump got them ejected from Panama, the Panama Canal, the canal itself, and all the offloading stations on either end. You would think they would have had a conniption fit, and they would have sailed their own aircraft carriers over there, say, you can't do that. That's our property now. Did they? No, they didn't. Not one peep out of China except a whimper. What should they have done if Trump went into Venezuela? You would think at that point, well, that was kind of a captive nation for them with resources. And did they send military troops? Did they send the Navy to defend Venezuela? No, they didn't. You see, they've been proven impotent along the way. Trump just called their bluff. You guys don't have the wherewithal to do anything maybe other than something right on your own territory. So these are the four things that boxed China into negotiating position. And then all these arch technocrats who accompanied Trump basically they didn't read him the Riot Act, but remember, birds of a feather flock together. All the CEOs on one side of the table were matched by other CEOs on the other side, Chinese CEOs, and they just got along great. They made deals. They did, they architected a new structure. They proposed the Board of Trade. Now this is another thing, the Board of Investment as well. And you have to, first thing I thought, well, is that related to the Board of Peace as well? All this board nonsense? What's going on here? So now in the world, we have the Board of Peace that's outside of the United Nations at this point. Trump says, no, we can do a better job. Forget you UN guys, forget it. And now you have the Board of Trade and the Board of Investment that's basically skirting the World Trade Organization. They're just saying, no, you guys, we're going to handle this. With the two superpowers in the world, we're going to handle this offline, not by you, but by us directly. So whatever this Board of Trade is going to be in the future, it'll probably be populated by the end of this year when Chairman Xi comes to America. That'll be lots of pomp and circumstance for sure. So anyway, all that to say, Trump had them over a barrel, and he exercised his options to tell them how the crow flies from now on. And so let me just, I want to make sure I get another angle in here on one other thing. This business, the myth that China has been morphing into our enemy for 50 years. What happened when Zbigniew Brzezinski in 1976 brought Chairman Deng to the table in Washington, D.C., he wined him, indicted him. It did, it was a big love fest. And when Chairman Deng went home, he didn't have in his hand the principles of free market economics or capitalism itself. He took with him Brzezinski's ideas on technocracy. This is really an important thing to understand, because that we identified what happened. That was Professor Anthony Sutton and me, identified what was going on back then with companies associated with the Trilateral Commission who were already operating in China before Chairman Deng even showed up. So, for instance, engineering company, Bechtel Engineering from the Bay Area, San Francisco. Private company, one of its members was on the board of the Trilateral Commission. They had been operating in China, constructing infrastructure projects, huge, multi-billion-dollar. They're building dams, railroads, energy infrastructure, you name it. They were involved in it. So, how did they have advance warning to do that in the first place? Well, this was part of the deal. How they got inducted back on the world stage. And remember that China, before 1976, looked just about like North Korea looks today. They had no economy at all. They had no sense of free market anything. They were just flat on their back, basically. So they came as a kind of like a blank slate for these technocrats and who were populating the Trilateral Commission in those early days. Well, fast forward, we see by 2000, China was identified as a technocracy by Time magazine, as I said. That's authoritative, in my opinion. That's totally conclusive. So it just so happened that the oldest university, science and technology university in China, it was founded in 1911. That's a long time ago, way before the revolution, by the way. It's the MIT of China. It's like MIT is to us. That's China. The university was Tsinghua University, and the guy that run it, as it turns out, he was a technocrat, and he was a high ranking figure in the Politburo because he was an engineer, electrical engineer at that point. He decided he wanted to create a board of advisors for Tsinghua University. And he wanted to get the West in it and whatever. This is the year 2000 now. You think what's happened since 2000? That was pivotal, that they were declared to be a technocracy, and then this shows up. So the board structure of this advisory board for the School of Economics and Management, SEM, at Tsinghua, that remember like MIT, the advisory board, the first chairman and kind of co-founder with this guy, the Chinese guy, the co-founder and chairman was none other than, you might remember this name, Hank Paulson. You're smiling. I know you know exactly who it was. This is the guy. This is Hammering Hank Paulson, they called him, during our financial meltdown in 2008. This is the guy who pounded his fist on the Senate table, said, "You guys need to give me a blank check, or we're all going to go to hell in the handbasket tomorrow." Just, okay. So here's the guy, the first board chairman in China. This university is located in Beijing. It has total infrastructure, tentacles into every piece of government architecture, including the military. So here we go. Over time, other people were joined. They've always had, probably a contingent of 30 or 40 people, big wigs from the West, populating this war, telling them how to construct the economic policies and their management policies all along. So it just so happens that the plane full of people that joined Trump, what are the odds that 6 of them, that's almost 40% of the contingent, technocrats, arch technocrats, billionaires, who would have thunk that almost 40, I think it's 37% actually, of those people would be on the board of advisors currently at Tsinghua University. These are people that go every year to China to meet with the board at least once, and sometimes more than once. So there's been a revolving door behind the scenes. We didn't know about this. It probably was public. You could have dug it out, but at this point, it's painfully aware to me that these people sold us out long before now. They were all there along the way, at least since 2000. And the people today who are on this board of advisors to Tsinghua University, Larry Fink, Jane Fraser, Citi Corp, Tim Cook. Tim Cook just happens to be the current chairman of the advisory board, like Henry Paulson was. David Solomon, Goldman Sachs CEO, Steven Schwartzman, Blackstone founder, Elon Musk. You figure he have to be in the action. These aren't educators. These aren't university professors advising them. No, these are technocrats, every single one of them. So you see, all this nonsense that's been circulated. We need to beat China. We need to they're arch enemies, and we have to somehow shove them back into the dark ages or something. I'm sorry, this just doesn't fly. Doesn't fly anymore at all. When you rip the veneer off of this and you say, "Oh, you guys have been after this with them for at least 26 years, and you're telling me now that you're just you get the idea to go with Trump to get more deals from them? Did you set this up beforehand? Did you have any inkling that what was going on in China in the first place? Did you have any input through the School for Economics and Management at Tsinghua University? Did you have any input on how the chairman Xi would respond to you when you got there? You see, this has been hand-holding behind the scenes, making us think there's something else on the surface. Wow. I say, wow. It just blew me away.
If I can jump in and just tell the viewers that China's economy supposedly got as large and slightly bigger than ours about 3 or 4 years ago. And so, of course, China, we think, has about 3 to 4 times as many people as the United States.
Yes.
China also, according to the UN and WHO, but I think these are accurate numbers, got 600 million people, that's, almost twice the American population, out of poverty in the last 25 to 30 years. So China is a middle class middle class for China. It's not a third world country anymore,
Yes.
the way it was 50 years ago. It is a second world with many billionaires and many first world people there as well. And a highly educated population, at least enough of an educated population. They have much more engineers, for example, than we do now. And so even though we claim, we wanted to beat China down on all of this, we knew that we couldn't because basically with US and Western money, China built themselves up, and they learned from us how to create money out of thin air. And so they printed money and they built cities. They're empty cities in China.
Yes, oh my.
That were built to house people for which there were no buyers. Nobody was interested in going there, and now they're just weeds running through the streets, and the houses are falling apart. But they only were able to do that because they learned from us how to print money out of thin air in order to build things for which there was really no desire. But my point being is that China is a developing and developed nation. I've never been there. So although one of my children who is an engineer, he's a computer engineer, has been there several times lecturing in China. We knew we could not beat them once we decided to invest all this money in China so they could make cheap junk for us. And they, make everything practically, from cars to, refrigerators to clothing and food even. Your mushrooms may come from China. So it was Kissinger and David Rockefeller who wanted to open up China in the first place, who's a big new Brizinski was working for. So the plan and they were globalists, right? They wanted a central world government. Yeah. China would be very happy with a central world government as long as China is running it. Now, so I think there still is a competition in that who are the people who are going to be running this thing? But China is certainly willing to play along, join us to an extent. After all, it has served them in good stead for the last 50 years, and see how they can come out on top in the end. Would you agree?
I would. There's obviously when you have people, even from a different race or a different country, you're not your language, whatever. You have the structural differences, how things are done, and culture, and all that kind of stuff. You're undoubtedly gonna have friction along the way. People want to say, people in America might say, well, or even technocrats in America, well, we want to do it our way. No, we don't want that. We will do it our way. So yeah, there's probably some friction. However, I think they can all agree at the end that whatever the common target is, they can somehow they can get on board with that and work out the differences along the way. And if it was up to politicians to make those put those pieces together, it would never happen at all. It would never happen in a heartbeat. Our politicians in this country, by and large, not all of them, but most of them hate China. They think China is a military threat to us, and that you can't convince them otherwise. They'll kick against the goads no matter anything that we do with China. China has some of its leftover politicians from the Politburo who the same way, probably. Anything that the United States says, we're not going to go along with it. So politics has always been a divisor. But remember, technocracy is not about politics. It's an economic system from the get-go. So they used the political system to get their way off and on over the years, and that makes kind of sense. When we debated the Trilateral Commission in 78, 80, they told us repeatedly, we're not political. We have no interest in politics. We just, what are you talking? You just took over the whole administration. All these, the president, the vice president, their members, all these other people, the board members, or
Of the Trilateral Commission.
they're all trilaterals. What do you see?
You're
How
talking
can
about
you
the
say?
Carter administration now,
Yes,
is that right?
the
Yes.
Carter administration. We just, it blew our mind. But looking backwards, they didn't. They were truthful. They had no interest in politics at all, other than it allowed them to capture the largest economic engine in the world. That would be the United States. This was
Yeah, so
their
what you
prize.
mean is, when you say they have no interest in politics, they have no interest in party politics in Democrats versus Republicans, but they do have an interest in capturing politically control of the world, and at least the United States.
Yes,
And Europe,
they've
and now
used
China.
they've used political power to their advantage to nudge the machine, if you will, back and forth through Democrat administrations, Republican administration. It didn't matter to these people. They operated through all of it.
So I
They
think
needed the money.
what we should sum up with
Mhm.
is that these people were interested in collecting everybody's data about everything,
Yeah.
making all the decisions for us, how far we can travel, how much food we get, how much money we can spend, within what things we're allowed to buy. They want to control all of that.
Yes.
They certainly, for the vast majority of the population, they want to control that. And they do it under claims that this is going to be equal and fair, equity,
Yeah.
all the rest, no racism, women are equal to men, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But it's at its heart, it is simply a desire to control.
It is.
And that
Absolutely.
is what the data centers are about. And China's already been doing it. China has provided a prototype for the rest of the world. This is
Yes.
how we can get it done. We've got cameras everywhere. We know what you're doing. We can keep your children out of school. We can stop you from traveling, et cetera. You can't buy a house if we don't like the way you live.
Mhm.
And so this is what these folks want to bring to the United States and the rest of the world. And I'll let you sum up.
No, you're right. You're right. When we talk about China being in the AI race with us, China has only about 375 AI data centers. We have over 5,000. Who's winning this race? Well, China is very astute. Obviously, they have enough horsepower to run their country with all their cameras and all the stuff they're doing, the social credit scoring system. They've mastered that in spades with only 375 data centers. We have over 5,000 now. This all crazy, over the top. Why do we need 5,000 data centers in this country? Go figure. I can't really say for sure, but I don't like the sound of it, because if China can do what it has done with their AI systems in China, we're in big trouble here in America, because if the switch ever gets thrown on us, digital IDs, financial management of us, the tracking of every piece of information, health information, tax information, you name it, all the stuff that Washington, D.C. collects on all the citizens of the country. All this stuff is going to be in the hands at some point of a super, what's the right term? The supranational or supranational organization like Palantir, who can control the whole thing. God help us if this is the case. where somebody like that, a private citizen, is running basically our country. This does not line up with traditional American values at all.
No, no. No, but as you said at the very beginning, what these folks have done, these technocrat globalists who want more control, is to create a variety of mechanisms for end runs around democratic processes.
Yes.
So this board of peace that Trump has invented, that has no democratic basis whatsoever. He just said, you pay $1 billion, you can belong, and I'm the chairman for life. It's not even part of his job as a president. It's him as a private citizen. I mean, it's crazy. It's probably illegal, but he's gotten away with it. Now he wants a board of peace and a board of trade. Again, end runs against any legal system within the United States, as well as, which I would agree with, around the UN system, around other multipolar systems. He's just creating his own, and he's hoping he does it fast enough that he can get away with it. Whether the degree of corruption that we're now seeing within the Trump administration is going to all come to a head, or and he will lose the midterms and he will be impeached and it will all fold, or whether the Uni Party will decide to let it go because they can gain control of it. That's another possibility. Why the Democrats have not been jumping up and screaming about all the corruption is very interesting. One has to ask oneself.
May I suggest
Please.
that more Democrats get what's going on right now than Republicans?
Oh, absolutely.
I think so.
But they're being quiet about it.
Yeah, they are. But nevertheless, you can see signs of awareness. Go figure. That it could be that the Democrat response might be sufficient to derail some of this stuff.
Yes. One hopes.
I don't care who does it at this point.
Right.
If it's the Society of Dog Chasers, I don't care. I just somebody get engaged here with these people and put them under the bus, please.
Yeah. Yes, we are interested in decentralization, not centralization, and not technocracy. We don't want everything in the world to be reduced to bytes and bits and on and off switches. So, Patrick, thank you a ton for helping us understand the world in ways the mainstream media and even the alternative have not figured out yet or want to withhold from us. And I'm sure people have found this a super interesting hour. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, we're live. So can you tell everyone your name, please?
My name is Crystal Creel Cart.
And this is about your mummy?
My mom, yes.
Yeah. All right. Did your mum take the COVID-19 shot?
No, she did not.
Why didn't she want to take it?
She had questions about it and wasn't comfortable yet. She was doing a little bit of research and we were discussing it, and she just didn't feel that it may be safe or not.
All right.
She just didn't know.
So what happened and she ended up in hospital?
Okay, what happened was that one morning, very early in the morning, she had fallen asleep in the recliner watching television, and she got up to go to the restroom and slipped and fell right at her recliner and broke her hip. She didn't know it at the time. She just knew she was in pain, and she called my sister, who came and helped her get back in the chair, and my sister tried to talk her into letting her call an ambulance because she could tell Mom was in a great deal of pain. And my mom suffered from osteoporosis. She was 77 years old, but she was a very healthy 77 years old. And the only thing that she took was the calcium for her osteoporosis, as well as thyroid medication. And otherwise she was good as far as her health was concerned.
Right. So she ended up in hospital not because of COVID,
No,
but because she broke her hip.
correct. What happened was, this happened on a Friday, and of course, close to the weekend, a lot of times you can't get in to see someone, and so she was, finally after a couple of days, we talked her into going to the ER, and she went to the ER and was seen there, and they said yes, in fact, she had broken her hip and she needed to see a specialist. And she had an appointment on Tuesday to actually go and see a specialist, and they indicated that she did in fact break her hip and she needed surgery. So they hospitalized her in order to do the surgery. But while she was in the waiting room, they tested her for COVID and said she was positive, but she had no symptoms whatsoever of COVID.
Okay, so she's suddenly positive with a broken hip.
Right.
So what do they do with her next?
So my niece was actually the one who took her because, a lot of other people had to work and so on and so forth. So it ended up being my niece, who was at the time very pregnant. I think she was 7 or 8 months along, actually. And she stayed with my mother the whole time because she knew once she left after a COVID diagnosis that no one would be in to see my mother again. And my mother suffered from something called white coat syndrome. She was very afraid of hospitals, and so she did her best to stay with my mother as long as she possibly could. At one point she needed to use the restroom, and they said if you go out into the hallway to use the restroom, you can't come back in. So they brought her a cup to pee in, excuse me, but that's the facts of the matter. And eventually when they took Mom up to the room, she had to leave, and it was at that point that she left my mother at the hospital.
And are you communicating via text with your mum?
No, my mom wasn't much into that, but we were communicating through my niece, who has some nursing experience. And she was my mother's power of attorney because of her medical background. And she was on the phone with the doctors and nurses constantly, finding out what Mom's condition was and that. So she was admitted on September the 14th, and the one text that I sent to my niece, who was her medical power of attorney, was do not let them give her remdesivir. Because at that point I had already had enough questions of my own that I had done some research, and I was by no means well versed, or I would have gone to the hospital and taken my mother out of there. But I said, do not let them give her remdesivir, and she said, oh my goodness, they already have. They gave her an IV with remdesivir in it before she left the emergency room. And I have the medical records that show that indicate that.
What about the broken hip, or do we not care about that now she's got COVID?
Well, she had, it was like not the primary thing anymore. It switched from her having a broken hip to, this total concentration on her COVID situation. They said they couldn't do anything until they had resolved the COVID issue. And
did she die with a broken hip?
She died with a broken hip. And she was admitted on September the 14th, and she passed away on September 16th, 2 days later, of a heart attack. And what's really upsetting to me is that she died alone. She would have never let one of us die alone. She had 4 children and 20-some grandchildren and several great-grandchildren by this time in her life. And I'd like to tell you about the day before she fell to break her hip, if I may. The day before she fell and broke her hip, she was out in her yard working in her flowers. And my mom lives on a body of water where there's a large bank, 2 large banks that go down to that body of water. And she had been out on her banks, standing on her banks, working in her flowers, and my sister came over and said, Mom, why don't you take a break? and we'll go into town and get an ice cream cone. And my mom went into town with my sister and my sister's grandson, which was my mother's great-grandson, and they got an ice cream cone. And she came back that same evening and stood on the front sidewalk and talked to one of our neighbors for 45 minutes. I mean, my mom was a very social person, and I mean, that's how healthy she was the day before she broke her hip. So we wonder if it wasn't the payouts to the hospital that actually caused them to exacerbate her death. Because, you know, there's so much money when they're admitted with a COVID diagnosis. There's so much money that's given when they're put on a ventilator. They wanted to put my mom on a ventilator the very last day, and we said no to that. And there's so much money that they receive after a COVID death, actually. And so we looked at the paperwork, and it ended up being over $100,000 that they received for my mother's death. And my mother is listed as the 1,000th death in the state of West Virginia, COVID death in the state of West Virginia. And she went into the hospital for a broken hip. I mean, and here's another very interesting thing. We got her the copy of her medical records with no problem. We went down and signed a release of information, and we got the medical records. And they not only took her vitals on September the 17th, the day after her death, but they recorded her vitals the day after her death.
Why?
Because I believe that the records were falsified. And someone somewhere made a mistake. I mean, how do you explain that? I don't know.
So she gets diagnosed with COVID. She goes straight to a COVID ward and has remdesivir. How many days of remdesivir?
Well, less than 48 hours, a little less than 48 hours. We weren't allowed to see her, of course, while she was, you know, in the hospital, but as soon as she passed, they allowed us to, you know, put on all the protective gear and go into her room. And I remember that I was, you know, putting on all the gear when a nurse approached me and said, "I just want you to know that your mother didn't suffer." And I looked at him and I said, "I don't believe you." And he said, "Are you calling me a liar?" And I said, "Yes. Yes, I am." And it just infuriated me that we could see her after she was gone. I mean, my mother wasn't there anymore. It was her body. And how much more so I would have rather been in there with her, you know, the day before. Or as she was passing, you know, it would have been such a much more comfort to her, you know.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
It's tragic. Show us a picture.
Yeah. This is my mother.
Yes. We're going to put a picture of her up on this bus. We're going to sign her name on the outside, but I mean, these people are disgraceful. She went in with a broken hip. She died with a broken hip.
She fell on a Thursday. No, excuse me, she fell on a Friday and she passed the next Thursday. She didn't even live for a full week after that.
And what was the actual, she had a heart attack?
She had a heart attack. Yes, that was what they put on the...
COVID heart attack?
Yes. I forget the exact wording, the exact verbiage, but it was basically heart attack as it related to COVID diagnosis. So it was just something about, I mean, I don't know how anyone could hear these stories and think, oh, well, that makes sense, because none of them make sense.
Right.
None of them make sense.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, that's it. But I do thank you for the opportunity to tell her story, because I don't want people to forget. And it's still going on. And if you have a loved one who is suffering from COVID, truly suffering from COVID, I would suggest that you do every natural and homeopathic thing that you can do to keep your loved one out of the hospitals, because it's happening everywhere, in every state of the United States and all over the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.